about that early stages, you also texted with Daniel Brühl. Now it took so long, he perfectly fits for his role in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't it a funny coincidence?
Yeah, it is funny how things work out.
I'm really glad talking to you, and this about an escapist psychological drama, Eden. And when I look at the story, I was thinking like in the late 20s or early 30s, Dora and Friedrich were considered adventurous with their stories printed in Germany, and all people were like, oh my God, what are they doing? It's so fascinating. And then I also was like, these two are the prototypes of modern travel and survival influencers. And I think it's fascinating to see 100 years later, humanity didn't evolve in any way. We still sit there and think, they can do it, I can do it too. Isn't that...
It's fascinating. And if you Google off the grid, it's one of the most visited sites on Google. People are fascinated by it. I personally am not, which maybe is what led me to want to tell this story, because these people are such a curiosity to me, and yet they say so much about humanity. This kind of collision of personalities is very interesting to me. But look, it's like a season of Survivor. Mike White, the creator of the television show White Lotus, is an old friend of mine. I asked him to read this script. He's also been a contestant on Survivor. He said, "Oh, it's like Survivor, only people really die." It's fascinating. And look, I think we also are interested in the way people can endure, the way they cope with a test. These kinds of things are really what storytelling has always been built around. And this is a very extreme example of it, and entertaining, because they're, a very interesting group of people, sexy, noble in some ways, dangerous in other ways. And I found their story, so engrossing.
Now, there is this information gap we have about what really happened on this island. We only have these documents left behind. We have the books of Dora and Margaret. How much would you say is, or in which direction does the movie go more? Dora, Margaret, and what is maybe a bit more self-interpreted?
I think more than anything, I think we probably believe Margaret's version a little bit more than we believe Dora's version, in reading it. Dora had a motivation of trying to preserve the spirit of the mission. She also had a co-author who was a pretty experienced writer, and so in our looking at it, we found Dora's to be a little more defensive and tactical, and Margaret's to be a little more straightforward, but probably not revealing the whole story. So we feel like both people pointed fingers at the other, and so basically, I from the time I heard the story, I began thinking, well, what could have really happened? And there are only 3 or 4 outcomes that you could really imagine, and so myself and Noah Pink chose one of them.
I've read that you said you heard first about the story around about 10 years ago.
15.
15 now,
yeah.
Okay. But how long did it take for you to say, this is it, I want to tell this story?
My daughter, Bryce, was with me on this family trip, and she immediately said, "Oh, Dad, I think this is a movie." And at dinner, our family was talking about it constantly. So while we were still on that trip, which started off at the Galápagos, then it went to Machu Picchu, and we spent a little bit of time in Peru, and I was already on my BlackBerry. This shows you the technology. It was a BlackBerry. I was reading Margaret's book, read Dora's book, and was beginning to piece together kind of a rough outline of what I thought a movie version could be. But it was such a kind of a crazy idea, and so out of my comfort zone as a storyteller that I didn't pursue it seriously. I started writing it myself, but at a certain point I realized I was only writing about 3 or 4 pages a year, and that was far too slow to be productive. And one day I was telling Noah Pink the story. We had worked together on a television series, the Genius series for Nat Geo, and he loved it. And he's a kind of a quirky, funny, very smart writer, and he began to do his own research, and it was willing to write a script on spec, and that's what led to us finally having a piece of material that we could share with actors. And say, is this of interest to you? And it's talented people were raising their hand and saying they wanted to be a part of it.
Talking about the actors and actresses, I heard that you, about that early stages, you also texted with Daniel Brühl. Now it took so long, he perfectly fits for his role in the movie. Right. Yeah. Isn't it a funny coincidence?
It is funny how things work out. We were on the promotional tour for the movie Rush, and I said, I've been working on this idea for a few years now. It's based on a true story. I told him about it. You'd be great to play Heinz Widmer, but you're a little young. You're a little too young. We talked about it and then never mentioned it again, although Daniel and I would stay in contact. And he was filming in Paris. I happened to be in Paris as well. And I went to him with the script, now Noah Pink's script, and I said, I think we're going to get to make this movie. Remember that one I talked to you about those years ago? Well, give this a read, and he responded positively. It's a talented group of people, great different personalities, but all sharing a kind of creative ambition and courage, and a lot of creativity, and they brought so much to the movie.
And the result is stunning. Not only the cast, also the settlement you recreated. I really enjoyed watching this movie, especially looking at our society and humanity today. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.